Hi there, this is Eshu. I'm the abbot here at Zenwest Buddhist Society. This Living Zen-podcast is just one of the many resources we've created at Zenwest to make Zen practice and training more available and accessible to people all over the world. Instructional videos, printable resources, and much, much more are also available on our website at www.zenwest.ca. If you're a regular listener, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email at office@zenwest.ca and let me know who you are, how you got started, and what brought you to Zen. Everything we make available in person and online at Zenwest is only possible because of the support of our members and associates, people like you. If the efforts of our community are making a difference in your life, I'd like to invite you to show your support and take part in making it happen by becoming an associate or member of the Zenwest Sangha. You can do this by clicking the Join Us tab on our website at www.zenwest.ca. Thank you for your support, and thanks for listening. Good evening. Thank you all for coming. The weather's so beautiful. I know that it's always a challenge when the weather's like this, between a nice, sunny patio with a cold drink. And I think you must be very dedicated to come and sit and look at the carpet on a Tuesday evening. So thank you for coming. One of the things that I wanted to touch on this evening is just about the way that we practice, and particularly the way that we practice in terms of not just our sitting meditation, but particularly when we take on a role like officer roles. And maybe for many of you who come, that's not something that you've had an interest or an opportunity to do. Maybe you're curious about it. If you are curious about it, you can talk to Soshin after the sit. But for those of you who do roles, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how doing a role fits in to practice. When we first begin to take up a meditation practice, usually we try to start off our meditation practice on our own, just sitting in our house, sitting in a park, or sitting somewhere. And at first the practice is simply to be aware of the body, the physical body, being aware of the physical sensations that are going on in the body, allowing the body to settle down and become still. Once we've started to allow the body to settle down and become still, we begin to pay attention to the breath and how the breath is flowing through the body. And a lot of the time we find that the breath starts off very tight and high in the chest. And if we get some good instruction, we learn to open up our abdomen, our hara, and allow the breath to flow freely down right into our core. And we become more aware of how the breath impacts the stability, the stillness of the body. The more we're able to be aware of our breath moving through the body, the more our physical body settles, becomes still and stable and solid and at ease, relaxed in a lot of ways. And then as the physical body begins to still, we start to be more and more at ease with sitting for just a longer period of time. as the muscles begin to develop, the stabilizing muscles. We're not relying on a chair or anything like that. We're able to sit for a longer and longer period of time, paying attention to our breath. And as we do this, we notice that the busyness of the mind also begins to settle down. Whereas in the beginning, it's quite difficult for us to pay attention to our breathing or our body for even a moment, because we're always sort of skipping out of that track and into what's coming up next, or what we want to get, or what so-and-so did to us in grade 3, or what my wife said to me this morning, or so on and so on, the list of things that we need to get done. And this sort of cycles back and forth between paying attention to this simple activity of sitting and breathing and being distracted by thoughts and emotions that are coming up. And we use our meditation technique to bring ourselves back to just paying attention to what's going on, this simple activity of the breathing, the physical body. And as we continue to do this for longer and longer periods of meditation, and particularly if we're doing this in a consistent fashion, our mind begins to settle as well, settle along with the breath and along with the body. And this all sort of creates this mutually beneficial cycle. So settling the body allows us to pay attention to the breath, allows the mind to settle and be more at ease, which allows the body to become more still and stable, which allows the breath to become deeper, which allows the mind to become more and more stable. It's a good thing. It requires consistent practice, just like anything. And in a lot of ways, it's a skill. Why? Why do we bother with this? As we become more and more proficient with this simple practice of sinking in or becoming aware of what it is that we're doing at this moment, simply being here, we begin to see that this ability of just being present as our lives are unfolding is a powerful tool. We don't always see it right away. We think, oh, this is kind of cool and quiet and relaxing to sit. And when we get to this place, we find that the walking meditation that we do maybe, or maybe the chanting that we do, can be a bit of a distraction. What we want to be doing is being still and sitting, paying attention to our breath. The walking meditation that we do is just like a development. It's the next step in a lot of ways, where we take this presence, we take this beingness, this aware beingness into an activity. Walking, in a lot of ways, is a really simple primary activity. One of the first things we do as human beings once we stand up is we begin to walk. But doing walking meditation in the format that we do here is actually really quite difficult, because we put a whole bunch of stipulations there. We say, walk in step with the person in front of you. So we're walking on the same foot at the same time as the person in front of us. And we're asked to be close to the person in front of us, just an arm's reach away, but not on top of them. So we need to pay attention to not only what's going on in our bodies and with our breath and in our mind and hearts, but our awareness needs to start to extend both to the environment around us, to the beings who are around us, and it also needs to take on motion. It's dynamic. Walking meditation seems like a very simple thing if we're watching from outside, just walking in step. But when you involve so many human beings, there's a lot of variables that happen. Each individual being is going through this process of being alert and attentive, connected to their body, mind, and breath in activity, and then skipping and going to their list and going to the past and what happened there and going to the future and what they hope happened there, and then realizing, oh wait, I need to come back and come back to what I'm doing right now, which is this activity of walking. I've been doing this for a few years, and so when I'm watching a group of practitioners do walking meditation, you can see each gap, you can see each thought, you can see each distraction and memory and gap that's taking place in the whole group. And these manifest physically as just falling at a step, or the space increasing in front of a person, or the space decreasing in front of a person. Sometimes it's people nearly fall over depending on how we are walking. It's not good, it's not bad, but it's a mirror with how are we doing with our connection, how are we doing at just simply being in our lives, in the activity that we're engaged in. Chanting is the same thing. Chanting, we begin to use our voices, and we begin to use our voices together with a whole group of people. And there's instruments. And in our everyday lives, we use our voices all the time. And do we use our voices with the fullness of our breath from a stable body, heart, and mind? When we speak to one another, or to our children, or to our employers, is this the space that we're coming from? Or are we coming from the distracted mind that's thinking about the future, what I want, or the past, what happened to me? Do we even know where our voice is coming from? So in chanting, we practice experiencing what it is to use the voice from a place of deep connectedness, deep rootedness, and deep harmony. So when we start to take on different roles in the Zendo, it's easy, very easy, to slip into doing jobs. It's very easy to slip into having a list of tasks. Because frankly, when we sit and we're engaged in this practice of divesting ourselves of lists, there's a certain kind of hunger that starts to arise in us. We spend so much of our lives working to a list and working to the future and trying to please people and trying to get it right. And in a lot of ways, when we're just sitting, that desire or that familiarity or that comfort starts to be starved, and we start to get anxious about it sometimes. And when we are offered a role, we can sometimes, rather than continuing this line of practicing, of how do I take this stability and connectedness that I'm developing through my seated, walking, and chanting meditation, how do I take that into individual interactions with objects and people? We so easily slip into a list of tasks. You know, the shoji needs to make tea, and they need to fill out the attendance sheets, and they need to greet new people, and they need to make sure that people get to the orientation leader. And the jikijitsu needs to make sure, the incense is lit, and the certain number of bells and clappers are rung, and the kaihan is sounded, and the order in the Zendo is maintained. There's a bunch of listy type things to do. And it goes on and gets more complex the more roles we do. There's the shojis that are are caretakers. They take care of us while we're in the Zendo and outside of the Zendo. We have the Densus, who are responsible for, the word means the masters of the hall. So they're responsible for the setup of our meditation hall. They're responsible for how the Butsudan is put together. And I think that in each of these roles, we have to be really careful that we're not just turning it into a job, that we're not just ticking boxes and making sure that things are done because they have to be done, because I want to be a good Densu, or a good Jiki, or a good Shoji, or a good person. I want to be liked. What we have to remember is that we're here to engage in practice and to awaken through practice. So even if we're just sitting, our practice is to commit to completely engaging in this activity of sitting. Give your whole self, your whole heart, and your whole body, and your whole mind to just this one simple activity. In a lot of ways, the opportunity to engage in Zazen in a group it's luxurious. Very few times in your lives is someone going to say, now all I want you to do is just sit there. Totally sit there. Completely sit there. Don't do anything but sit there. And if we can engage in that, if we can grasp that, it's a gift, and it's a beautiful, wondrous opportunity to simply be and to be complete in the being. As we engage in roles, this same principle applies in every single role. When we're the Jikijitsu, the job is to ring the bell. That was good. And yes, you're supposed to ring the bell at certain times, and you're supposed to ring the bell a certain number of times, but in each instance, when we're engaged in the activity of ringing the bell, the only thing that's on our mind, the only task, the only activity that we're engaged in is in the ringing of the bell, and letting ourselves go completely into that, so that there is no thinking about good and bad. There's no thinking about the next bell that I need to ring. It's just this ring. And if there's another bell to ring, it's just this ring. And when we're shoji, sometimes we're making tea, or sometimes we're washing cups. And it's easy to turn that into a task, because we make tea and we wash cups in our everyday lives, and it's just a mundane thing to do. And we can treat it like that. And I appreciate it when people come and wash cups and make tea. But I would much rather have people come and practice shoji, which is to, when you're making tea, only just make the tea. Completely and utterly give yourselves to making the tea, or completely and totally give yourselves to washing the cups. This is a rare opportunity to do dishes here. That sounds funny, but it's true, because when you're asked to wash a cup as the shoji here, that's all you're being asked to do. And you're actually allowed to say, I'm just trying to focus on washing the cups, just doing the shoji job. So be careful not to just slip into our daily activity, making it just a task that we're doing. The same goes with the densu job, which is a big job. Arranging flowers and cleaning incense bowls. When you're working with flowers, the densu is actually kind of a tricky job, because you start to work with living things, dying things. Flowers are wonderful, patient, kind, forgiving things. When we're doing the Dentsu job, we're ringing bells and we're chanting and we're setting up cushions, and each cushion we should recognize as not separate from ourselves. So we're not just slapping out seats for people to put their bums on. There's a term in Buddhism called Bodhi Mandala, which means seat of awakening. And so when we're Dentsu, we have to sort of bear in mind that we are preparing the Bodhi Mandala for innumerable bodhisattvas to practice. And so the Dentsu's job is actually really difficult and really needs your complete attention and intention in every gesture and in every task, laying out the cushions, establishing the butsudan, or the altar table. Complete immersion, dissolution. And there's always this balance as practitioners that we're meeting. And it's between this one way of being, which is deeply connected, unifying the body, the mind, the breath, and immersing ourselves in the unfolding activity of life. And that's one way. And the way that meets it is the way where we stand outside of what's going on around us and to us, and we act in that. We follow our list and check, 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 check. And the thing that we have to pay attention to in Zen practice is that one of the ways that Zazen is described is the backwards path, or the backwards step. And it's a way in which we can engage with life differently, engage with life in a way that unifies us with our environment and with the objects and with the beings that are in our one world, in our one environment. And there's a way that we can interact in which we separate further and further from the environment that we're in and identify those things more and more separately and have our likes and our dislikes. And this is the way that we usually act in the world. And the way that practice works best, or has the most transformative and deep impacts, is when we take this practice that we're developing in this formal environment, which begins with our sitting, which begins with our walking and with our chanting, which we volunteer to take up more challenging tasks, hidden tasks, which are hidden as mundane things, ringing bells and doing dishes and laying out cushions. And we engage in these everyday kind of tasks from this same place of stability and connectedness, equilibrium, awareness. And the transformation happens when we realize that this is a practice that does not require us only to be in the meditation hall, or only to be in the shoji's room, or only to be in the jikijitsu seat. We find ourselves doing the breakfast dishes at home, but the way that we're connected with that task is totally different. We're not looking at it as a task anymore. We're looking at it as a way in which we can acknowledge, affirm, and embrace our completion in an activity. We go forward, and as we're cooking our food, as we're interacting with our children, we can have these experiences of both task doing and box checking, standing outside of our lives and acting with it. Or we can have these experiences of immersing ourselves in that unfolding activity with awareness and coming from this deep source and acting with harmony. And in this way, rather than bringing taskiness and busyness into the meditation hall and into our Dharma practice, we expand outwards and allow the Dharma practice to impregnate every aspect of our lives. And we bring this awakening, this unification, this harmony into all aspects of our lives. And all of this comes back to this simple, single activity of taking up this seat, stabilizing the body, paying attention to our breath, and allowing our mind to settle into this unfolding activity that's taking place, that is our life right now. Okay, I'm going to leave it there because I'm way over time. So thank you again for coming on this lovely evening. Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.